welcome back to another episode of The Week in Strange. I don't know if you all can believe it or not, but this is episode 12. We've been doing this all together now for 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months.
Yeah.
Feels like just yesterday, but at the same time, I feel like we've done a lot over the last 12 weeks, and it's really turning into a fun show here, doing this live on Facebook with you all, especially last night. All those of you who tuned into the pub, that was a great time. And I know, Thomas, I think you had a good time with that too.
Yeah, it was great. And we didn't have any real technical problems or anything. It went as smooth as a bell. And it was great to see everyone in such good form and having a laugh. And we had some good chat there too. So, and judging by the comments on YouTube, everyone else loves it too. So we'll do it every 2 weeks, I think, because it's a bit of a pressure thing to be doing this the next day every week. So, and also it makes it more precious, I think, doing it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, we can build up new ideas and get some experiences every 2 weeks. But it was a really great experience getting to connect more intimately with some of you out there that, we chat back and forth in different threads on Facebook, but it was great to put faces to names and hear actual voices and just see people in their natural habitats. And, we all like a pub, so that works.
And how interesting everyone is,
Very interesting. Yeah. We've got a great group here and love you guys so much. And thank you again for always being here. And it's a great time every day that Thomas and Jason and I sign in together, and we know we're about to connect with all of you again. So thank you so much for showing up every week and supporting this. And it's a great time. So thank you all.
On the Facebook live chat, just let us know if we've got any weird problems going on with audio or visual. I appreciate all the input that we've gotten back from a lot of you. So just if there's something going on, just send it in the chat and we'll try to straighten it out here on our end.
Fix the glitch if there are any.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start right off. This one came out just a few days ago, September 10th. Says, scientists want to send autonomous robot swarms to mine the moon. With the launch of lunar orbital stations and the first moon landing in years expected to take place this decade, scientists are increasingly setting their sights on technology that would allow future missions to mine the moon for resources. A team of researchers from the University of Arizona recently received a $500,000 grant from NASA to develop space mining methods. The result is the development of a swarm of autonomous robots that could search and mine for rare earth minerals on the moon. Lunar Robot Swarm will work as a team and improve over time. The team behind the robots developed an electrochemical process that drills through rock 5 times faster than any other method. This is combined with a neuromorphic learning architecture technique called the Human and Explainable Autonomous Robotics System, or HART. That trains robots to work together and improve their collaboration skills over time via machine learning. The team will build and train the robots on Earth so they can hone their teamwork skills in a safer environment before going to space. Ultimately, the team aims to deploy the swarm of robots on the moon, where they will be able to build basic structures and mine for resources without instruction from Earth. Mining under the moon's surface could greatly reduce the reliance on transporting materials from Earth for future lunar stations. Materials that could be mined on the moon included rare earth minerals, titanium, gold and platinum, and helium-3. Rare earth minerals could help to build medical equipment and smartphones, while helium-3 could fuel nuclear power plants in the distant future. Sending artificial creatures to the moon. Jikin Thanga, who developed the HART learning architecture, likens the swarm of robots to a herd of animals or workers on a farm. In a sense, we're like farmers. We're breeding talent out of these creatures, or a whole family of creatures, to do certain tasks, he said. By going through this process, we help perfect these artificial creatures whose job it is to do the mining tasks. The team believes that the swarm of robots could free up astronauts to spend more time on critical mission operations, at the same time as performing dangerous construction tasks. The idea is to have the robots build, set things up, and to do all the dirty, boring, dangerous stuff so the astronauts can do the more interesting stuff. The University of Arizona team isn't the only one aiming to send mining robots to the moon. In June, California-based Maston Systems announced it was developing a lunar rover that could blast through moon rock to reach ice, providing vital water resources to future lunar stations. Space mining is also set to go beyond our celestial neighbor, as asteroids in our solar, such as 16 Psyche, contain abundant materials. Its net worth is estimated to be $700 quintillion that could be transported back to Earth. Sourcing materials off-world could shape the economy of the future, with resources mined autonomously with little human intervention.
Oh man, I'm just going to start off with this one. The thing that got to me is the way that they use the language in this.
Mining.
The thing about them being like autonomous animals, as if like these things are sentient, and I know that like the AI people like to give human rights and that kind of shit away to robots and things, but this is just I don't know. This is a weird idea to be playing with this thing, saying that these machines are alive, and I know that they're putting it out there as this is like a lunar mission and a mining of rare earth elements and stuff. But it's just, again, this weird, like creepy tiptoe that the media is doing into this transhumanist idea that robots and machines are somehow like the next evolutionary step in life. And it's just like people like this and people like Elon Musk who talk about like humans becoming obsolete in the near future. I just see there's all this language kind of wrapped around this, and whether they actually make these robots that go to the moon or not, like, it's just weird that people are getting these ideas and young people are hearing this, like the idea of farming robots and stuff. Like, I know that's going to sound sexy to a bunch of like, people going right out of high school into college and stuff and getting these technical degrees and everything. But it's just weird to me. And it's just, the language around it is so strange.
Well, and there's something so sacred about farming the land and working with the land.
Yeah.
And to remove that, I mean, for one, we're going off Earth, but there's still organic bodies. There's still living celestial bodies. And to have just robotic farmers, it takes away that whole spiritual aspect of why the fuck are we even going into space?
Yeah.
How could it be economically viable? That's what I don't understand. They have these robots, it would be incredibly expensive to get them there, to deploy them, send them out, develop them, have to develop them at first to begin with, they haven't even developed them yet. And then you have to get them in and back. So what kind of spaceship do they have that can take back ore and whatever from the moon? I mean, they don't have one. They just don't have one. And also it's extremely dangerous for humans to be on the moon. They still don't have enough of protective equipment. They basically can only last a couple of days inside a steel box, and they have to go home because they'll be killed by the radiation. That's why the Apollo missions were so short. There's, I can't see how viable it is. Leave the humans to do the more interesting stuff, like play golf, have sex with the robots. I mean, what's going on? It just seems to me this is a pie in the sky research bollocks that's just been, money's been thrown at something, and it sounds great. Look at all the Martian missions and all the Martian bases and all the stuff. They poured huge amounts of money into this stuff. They can't properly go to space. I really do believe that. I mean, they can get to the moon and back. I don't think they can actually do much more. And we talked about this in another program. The astronauts go nuts inside in the ISS. They go nuts. So, I just think this is more pie in the sky stuff. I just don't see logistically how it's cheaper to do it. It's just like doing it because they can. And it's also an admission. They'll never admit that they can't send humans into space because we can't live off this planet, really. So they want robots to do it. And that's really what I wish they would just come forward and say humans will never travel into deep space. We don't have the bodies that can do it. But we'll do it with robots. But it doesn't sound sexy enough. They want Buck Rogers or something out there, Captain Kirk.
I mean, that's probably right. That like the social engineering is leading things up to that kind of discussion where, mankind can't go into space, and they're softly putting it out there by these overly romanticized stories of quadrillion or multi-quadrillion dollar revenue ideas of potentially mooning.
Well, there's that too.
Potentially potentially mining the moon, and all these crazy ideas of bringing back quadrillions. I mean, if you even think about like $1 trillion compared to $1 billion,
what was this?
14 quadrillion. That's
quintillion.
Quintillion. So that's what, 5 sets of 3 zeros. Yeah, because billion is 2 sets, trillion is 3 sets, right? Yeah, and it's just that's an unfathomable amount of money. But yeah, it's that whole. Say again, Thomas. I think you're muted.
They're trying to get research grants from, or not research, R&D money from big corporations. It's just basically a pitch. These are probably shysters anyway that don't know what they're doing. I mean, it was like the genome project back in the day, or the .com bubble. You had someone setting up an office saying, "I'm now a .com company. Invest 10 million in me," and he would get it. The same thing with the genome. We're now part of the genome project. Is invest 10 million in me, and they would get it. It's the same thing. They're just looking for speculative funds. That's all.
Well, and that's interesting that you bring up the corporations too, because we were just having this conversation the other day that corporations have been granted, well, they're looked at as individuals, right? Like an actual living being. So now they're going to get money from the corporations to fund these robots, and it's just wiping out all, it takes away the human factor.
Takes all the humans out of it, yeah.
It's transhumanist guff looking for money, and mark my words, this will go nowhere.
Yeah, shit of this magnitude really never does.
The Nazis on the moon would blow robots with
Like
anyway.
this up.
Oh,
Good?
yeah, good. Let's do the next one, yeah.
Okay. This one's from September 6th. It says, excuse me, the Southwest looming water war. The Colorado River irrigates farms, powers electrical grids, provides drinking water to 40 million people, and it is drying up. For farmers in the desert of central Arizona, success and failure is defined by who has water and who does not. At the moment, Dan Philander is still among the haves. Inside a municipal building in Pinal County, Philander rolls a map out across the boardroom table. On the patchwork of brown desert and green farmland in front of us, Philander points out the parcels of land where he and his brother, son and nephew grow cotton, alfalfa, and several other crops. About half the water he uses to irrigate his land is pumped out of an ancient aquifer deep beneath the desert floor. The other half, however, originates hundreds of miles away at the headwaters of the Colorado River. The water begins its journey high in the Rocky Mountains of the Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming, where it first falls as snow. As winter fades and the snowpack melts, water drains in the mountain streams and tributaries that feed the Colorado River. The river's vast drainage area is divided into 2 regions, the upper and lower basin. Around 90% of the river's flow originates in the upper basin. After flowing down from the upper basin, the river snakes its way across the southwest, eventually reaching Lake Mead near Las Vegas. And from there, a system of dams, canals, and pipelines channel it to the irrigation ditches that water Philander's thirsty fields in Pinal County. Today, this river system supplies 40 million people in 7 western states and Mexico, and irrigates more than 5 million acres of farmland on its way into Mexico and the Gulf of California. Las Vegas relies on the river for 90% of its water supply, Tucson for 82%, and San Diego for around 66%. Large portions of the water used in Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Denver also come from the river, and experts say these booming metropolises would not have been possible without its supply. But the Colorado River is in crisis. And as this crisis is unfolding, farmers, scientists, water managers, and policymakers across the Southwest are increasingly alarmed. Water managers have long recognized that the river is plagued by overuse, but over the last 2 decades, demand for the river's water has often outstripped its supply. Since 2000, the river's flows have shrunk roughly 20% compared to the 20th century average. At the same time, its 2 main reservoirs, the savings account for the entire system in times of drought, has drained rapidly. The Colorado River main reservoirs. Lake Mead, the largest man-made reservoir in the US, which is fed by the Colorado, recently sunk to its lowest level since the lake was filled in the 1930s. Its water levels have fallen more than 146 feet since their peak in January of 2000, and the lake is now just 35% full. Lake Powell, the river's second largest reservoir, sits at 32% of its capacity. As water levels drop, millions of kilowatt hours of hydroelectricity that powers homes from Nebraska to Arizona are also at risk. We are in uncharted territory for this system, says Jeff Lucas, who is an independent consultant, and former research scientist at the University of Colorado at Boulder, where he focused on water issues for 20 years. The first official water shortage. On Monday, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation declared the first ever official shortage, which will trigger the largest mandatory water cuts to date in the Colorado River Basin. And after decades of receiving water from the Colorado, the spigot could soon be turned off on many farms here, including Flanders. While the farmers knew this day would come, a harsh reality is setting in. To stay in business, they'll need to pull more water from below ground. Back on the table, the lantern points to the diamonds and circles that dot the map. Those mark the locations of new groundwater wells that his irrigation district is considering, the first new ones they have drilled in decades. For much of the last century, the Colorado management has focused on choosing who will be allowed to stick their straw into the river next and how much water they can take. At times, that process has sparked major disputes, with some leading all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, many of the basin states are having a more painful discussion, deciding who will receive less water and how much. Experts say the next phase in the river's history could be even more contentious. The current Colorado River guidelines expire in 2026, and early negotiations are already underway for a new framework to determine how to divvy up its water. But by the time officials from the states, Mexico, Native American tribes, and the federal government convene, it is likely that the river's water supply will be even more tenuous than it is today.
Yeah, no, this seems like another one of these things where they're trying to create a man-made climate change type of narrative from this, that, we're running out of water, which it seems like that is being caused by something, but it's not being caused by, what the media is saying that it is. And they're going to, when they're talking about this, I would imagine there's going to be some kind of restrictions that are put into place through laws and regulations and stuff that are going to make it very difficult for farmers in the Southwest to be able to do their thing.
Autonomous.
Yeah, to be able to be autonomous. Thank you. That they're going to be overly dependent on these government statutes and laws and everything. That's just going to make it, again, more difficult for the United States here to provide crops and livestock to the American people, making us, again, ultimately dependent on, right now, like we're getting a lot of our beef from North African farmers and stuff, and, this whole global economy thing. So to me, I see a little bit of that kind of peeking its way into this.
The theme of water being the oil of the 21st century is definitely a growing one, isn't it? The thing is that, if these farms are not able to irrigate their crops enough, that's nature telling me that your farming days here are over. As I know it's a painful thing to say to these farmers, but that's what the land is saying. The land the old expression that the land grows weary of its own. And when these ecological things impact upon farming, like the Dust Bowl in the 1920s of Oklahoma, that's nature saying, Gaia or Mother Nature saying, you're not to farm here anymore. And this is I believe the earth is an intelligent being, and it will shut off. If there's a river if something like farming is causing stress upon an ecological environment, such as the Colorado River, it will deplete the rainfall in order to stop the hemorrhage of the water into where it shouldn't be. So, I take a very kind of pagan philosophical approach to it. This is nature saying, it's over, the gig is up. Go, do something else somewhere else, if you have to pump that much water into an area to irrigate it, how agricultural is it? How suited for agriculture is it meant to be?
That's what I was going to say too. Is a lot. I'm from New Mexico, so I'm very familiar with these areas that they're talking about. And it seems to me that large portions of those areas were not ever meant to be agricultural. Used for big agricultural projects. It's not made for it. You have to pump water in, which you're taking it away from somewhere else where it actually belongs and putting it into an artificial veins, pumping it into artificial bodies of water, and then using it to grow these crops that really wouldn't grow there natively. Yeah. So you can only do that for a couple hundred years. I don't know.
Ireland was never meant for farming. It was meant to be a forest, a rainforest. And that was why it was full of those, nature filled it full of those trees. It was covered in old growth forests at one time to soak up all the water that was falling. It was, in the Pacific Northwest is the same way too. They're meant to be rainforests. We can only, alter a landscape so much. It becomes a point where you're using endless amounts of technology to sort of like solve problems, and when nature's just saying stop.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, no, and it's like it's one of those things. It's like a bad relationship. Those farmers, if they keep at this, things will be much worse down the road. And move the agriculture to somewhere else in the US. But it's not. I mean, alfalfa too. Like I had a laugh when he said that. I mean, you think corn or wheat or something like that, or fields of vegetables, but alfalfa sprouts. It's like all that.
I think a lot of that's grown for the livestock.
Mm.
Really, I was cattle feed. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's grazing.
Right. So it's not even. Yeah, it's not really viable produce. It's going to feed the animals, which we export a lot of our beef anyway. So
yeah.
So there, the bottom line is that the Colorado River should be shut off by nature for a reason, and you're over farming it. Let nature have the land back, or do something else with it.
Yeah, strong arming nature never ends well.
I often wonder here, like in the what I call this the Columbia. What river is this?
It's Columbia.
Oh, the Columbia. Yeah, not the Colorado, but here in the Columbia River Basin, if this would be, a kind of a more viable option for farmland in we're talking about kind of the more arid part of eastern Washington through Idaho and Montana. I know they grow some food here, but there's a
lot of agriculture here, but it's a lot of like the alfalfa stuff. There's a lot of potatoes and apples and things like that. But no, they use the power of the Columbia for nuclear technology instead of farming.
I'm also fascinated by things like permaculture and, that story in America, Johnny Appleseed, that's actually a true story. I thought that was just a myth. He really did plant billions of apple trees through nurseries all over the US. And the West was conquered by the apple. The apple was grew very well in the US. And I mean, this whole idea of I'm kind of like into the rewilding thing, but I'd love to see something like forests filled with hazelnuts and walnuts and things that were edible, and wild pigs and deer that were shot, and rabbits and mushrooms and all things that humans can eat within a natural. I mean, I know it's probably not as efficient, and it would be more expensive, but I am fascinated by this idea of even around where you are and I am now, we're surrounded by food, wild food. There's things you can eat. That's never, because corporations can't make money from it.
Right.
Package. Yeah. But it's
right. They make it sound very dangerous to, walk down the street and eat a berry that grows off a vine. You don't know what's on it, or, if it's contaminated. Yeah. But I know there's a big movement that's been going on for the past couple of years to have lawns, or have gardens, not lawns, where people have these vast spreads of, shitty green grass that doesn't do anything except take up a bunch of water.
And chemicals, but also there's town ordinances, and they stop people from, the local bureaucrats say, oh, you can't grow potatoes in your yard.
Right.
A lot of crap goes on, unfortunately. But the city of Paris at one time used to produce more food than it consumed. It used to export food, and they grew it on the roof of the buildings. They grew huge amounts of. See, it was easier back then. There was horses everywhere, so there was fertilizer everywhere. So, but it just goes to show you can produce food in lots of places, not just in big, huge, agribusiness infrastructure.
Yeah, actually, alfalfa sprouts are really easy to grow on your countertop, and they're very good for you. We don't need hundreds and thousands of acres alfalfa crops.
Oh, you can grow potatoes in a barrel.
Yeah.
Trash can.
A plastic bin. You can grow, and it's sustainable and everything, and it doesn't require much. I mean, that's the thing. It's like that. And the permaculture thing again, I was like, I go up to the woods and I see the wild pigs running around, and they say, why can't they just release all the pigs out of the horrible slaughterhouses and let them live in the woods and let them have a happy, normal life with their friends? And then when they reach a certain age, shoot them and then send them in the market.
And a lot of places they've made harvesting water illegal as well.
Yeah, rainwater. Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But
Anyway, yeah. So that's it. Water is definitely going to be a big issue in the next 50 years. There'll be wars over. I know it.
yeah. Yep. Okay. This one comes from September 12th. And it says, thousands of dead sparrows mysteriously fall from the sky in Bali, Indonesia. Thousands of sparrows mysteriously fell from the sky in Parang Village district in the island of Bali, Indonesia, a few days ago. According to officials, this is not the first case in Bali or Indonesia. Similar bird mass die-offs also took place 5 years ago in Denpasar and Taban Regency, Bali, as well as Sukabumi, West Java, in July 2021. Bird carcasses and droppings have been sampled for analysis to determine the cause of the incident. The sudden death of these thousands of small birds is still unclear. Disease, poisoning, herbicides or pesticides, weather, what about an EMF? Given the sparrows live in large colonies, the transmission of disease is fast and furious. Rapid weather changes can shock and stress out the birds, leading to mass die-offs. Should we be worried about EMF exposure? There is growing evidence that our addiction to cell phones could be impacting brain functionality and be the cause of stress, anxiety, insomnia, and a lack of attention and focus. Now, a new report has found that we're not the only living things to be affected by our increasing dependence on wireless technology. Mammals, birds, insects, and even plants are likely being harmed by the electromagnetic radiation emanating from Wi-Fi, cell phone towers, broadcast transmitters, and power lines. The researchers said that evidence is accumulating that mammals, like bats and mice, have a magnetic sense that is affected by radio frequency modulated electromagnetic fields. Birds in particular may be highly susceptible. The researchers found that even weak magnetic fields in the radio frequency range can disrupt birds' magnetoreception, their ability to use the Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves and find their way home. Homing pigeons are well known for their magnetoreception, but this sense has also been detected in other animals like red foxes, and there is evidence that even large mammals like deer use the planet's magnetic fields to sense direction. A number of invertebrates, including worms, mollusks, and fruit flies, also use this ability. The report also concluded that EMR can also alter the metabolism of plants, causing significant changes demonstrated at cellular and molecular levels. The authors noted that even a low-level exposure to EMR caused a rapid increase in stress-related transcript accumulation in tomatoes. Transcription is the first phase in the expression of a gene in which a specific segment of DNA is copied into RNA. The authors said that their findings indicate an urgent need to strengthen the scientific basis of the knowledge on EMR and their potential impacts on wildlife, specifically calling out the need to base future research on sound, high-quality, replicable experiments so that credible, transparent, and easily accessible evidence can inform society and policymakers to make decisions and frame their policies. The UK charity BugLife, which proposed the analysis, warned that there wasn't enough research to determine limits to EMR pollution. The group said that serious impacts on the environment could not be ruled out and urged that 5G transmitters should not be placed near streetlights, which attract nocturnal insects like moths, nor in areas near wildlife. BugLife CEO Matt Shardlow, who served on the expert steering group of the report, warned that there is a credible risk that 5G could impact significantly on wildlife. We apply limits to all types of pollution to protect the habitability of our environment, but as yet, even in Europe, the safe limits of electromagnetic radiation have not been determined, let alone applied. This is a classic case of out of sight, out of mind. Just because humans cannot see electromagnetic radiation, this does not mean that animals cannot see the pollution or be significantly impacted at a neural or cellular level. A proper research program and clear policy measures are long overdue.
Well, yes to all that.
Right?
About the electrosmog. I have never once in my years seen any kind of research document where they looked into the effects of 5G or any of this stuff or any previous technology on animals. It's almost like, well, let's see what happens. Put it out there, and if they die, they die. We'll make the next one that doesn't kill them. They're playing Russian roulette with wildlife. You can see that. Now, regarding the sparrows, I'd say that's a different thing. Sparrows are very susceptible to disease. When I grew up here, there was sparrows everywhere. They all vanished around the year 2000, and sparrows were extinct for a good 10 years in this part of the world. They were in Europe. The sparrow nearly became extinct because of a disease. They're back now, but that bird is like a canary. It's very susceptible to illness. So that's probably what happened to ones in Bali. But the other issue of the electrosmog and all that stuff, they don't give a shit. They have never tested it on anything. And now there's a big problem in England that they've noticed a big decline in bats. And the reason why they're starving because the moths are all being killed by the LED street lamps. So, they throw this shit out there. They don't test it. And then they wait for something to go wrong. And then they'll say, we'll fix it. We'll fix it later. It's incredibly irresponsible, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it seems like the overly educated groups that tend to spearhead this type of stuff. It's like, yes, we should be doing scientific research and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, it shouldn't take a fucking rocket scientist to be able to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, you have Greta Thunberg making speeches at the UN saying things like entire ecosystems are being wiped out. The irony is the ecosystems are being wiped out by the same people who are sponsoring and idolizing her.
Right.
The tech industry.
Yeah, that is the irony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw this one last night and added it on at the last minute because it reminded me of what we were talking about yesterday with, was it Ian who talked about the squirrels? Or was it someone talked about the squirrels?
Jason in Cornwall, yeah.
Yeah, just reminded me of that. But it's just, but yeah, Thomas, if you're saying if it's because of some disease or something, that would make sense too. But I wonder about the squirrel thing, if that could have anything to do with this, with the electrosmog from the different cell towers and everything that they put up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw a video I posted about a year and a half ago of literally into my community, the 5G people came in like an army. Armies of trucks. I actually even interviewed the guy. I got him on the slide. And it was almost like at any cost, we must get 5G up. And they would descend on rural communities. And have you ever seen a 5G transmitter? It's only about that size. It's a tiny thing. And it sits on top of lampposts. It's just, you don't need a big cell tower. 5G doesn't work. It works by relaying to station to station. It's kind of like an internet type thing. And it's a little thing like that sits on top of a light post or a telephone pole or whatever they can stick the thing. You have big ones that transmit to them, but they bounce all locally. And they're everywhere. And it was literally a military operation to get these things up at any cost as soon as possible, in a very kind of clandestine way. And then they've moved from community to community like an army. And the next thing you know is you have to lock down the Rona. What? Now, I'm not saying 5G caused that or anything, but it seems to me there's something not right there. There's something. I don't see how 5G could cause a disease or something, but it could be used for mind control purposes. It could be making people irrational. It also could be, back to the thing we spoke about last night, the dreams. Everyone seemed to have these massively vivid dreams. Is that caused by it? We don't know. They could be fucking with us any way they wanted, and we really wouldn't know what they were up to.
I was going to say, especially because like you're talking about the mind control stuff, Thomas, it's the weird thing too, is they're pushed towards the IoT stuff, not the Illuminates of Thanateros, but the Internet of Things, that IoT, where it's like this push for like your coffee maker to talk to your microwave, to talk to your cell phone, to talk to your security thing, that 5G network being so integrated in with devices that you have around your house. So there is that relay of close networks. So wherever they do that with those little devices you were talking about, because they all seem to be some kind of incredibly close network thing. But I would imagine with that and some of that mind control tech from they've been looking into that since 1920s, 1930s with radio and magnetism, and how sophisticated things have gotten now with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, that I would imagine that they probably got that dialed in pretty well. Like we talked about, I think it was either on the first or the second one, the Navy having that technology to be able to to use like a remote electromagnetic weapon on someone. So yeah, what you're saying, Thomas, with the Rona and all of this being, rolled out at the same time, and people have talked about like blue beam and these ideas of being able to project things in the sky. Well, you won't even need to do that if you just project things. You project ideas directly into someone's mentition. And I know Cliff High was talking about recently this thing about that people are having a certain ideas about the needlecraft being almost like program, like picking it up like an advertisement, like the way they do I think it's called the neural net with Facebook and everything, where they target ads into you. There's been people that have had like a neural net type thing about, oh, go get the needlecraft. It's a good idea. And there's just been these people and remote viewers who've had these ideas about the needlecraft being somehow like a homeopathic thing for them, like not a homeopathic, a harmonious thing with them. So, but that idea of like putting out fixed ideas into people's minds through the Internet of Things stuff. And it's like you're talking about with the those LED light bulbs, how you can't get the standard like incandescent light bulbs for the house anymore here in the US. It's like you can go to the Dollar Tree and they've got the LEDs everywhere. And it's just like they emit this terrible light. Gives me a headache. But I think it's just strange that all those devices, they want them connected together throughout your house. And if there is a mind control thing, it would be in that Internet of Things type of network. Yeah, the black IoT, the dark IoT.
There was an interview with a guy. There was a local, not local, but somewhere in the country. There was a famous sportswear company that had been around for 70 years, and they were celebrating their 70th years. They make track suits, and they were talking about like how this local family company has managed to survive Chinese imports. It's a great success making sports clothes. And they interviewed the youngest son who's now taken the company over. And he goes, where do you see the sports apparel future? And he goes, I'm fascinated by the Internet of Things, track suits that can regulate your body temperature. If it's cold, they heat you up. If it's hot, they warm you. They can be used. The track suits can be used. They're socks that can monitor your electrolyte levels in your body, and as you're jogging or running, can administer electrolytes through your skin into you. And he was going, this is just fantastic stuff. He goes, that I went to a conference recently, and it's like, basically clothes can be used to administer medications and everything. And I'm like, what? And,
don't they know that that's what your skin does? That's what the body does? They just describe what the human body does?
Humanism.
Fucking brilliant idea.
But he was like real excited. He was saying, oh yeah, like imagine a pair of like boxing gloves that heal the hands as you're punching. Like it can measure, it can stop bruising and damage to the nerves and stuff. It's like, what,
Man,
this is unnecessary, guys. We don't need all this.
It's like what, like Crowley said, every once in a while scientists discover a little bit of magic, and it's like at the same time every once in a while scientists discover a little bit of nature. It's like, yeah, man, you're onto the right path. Now look and see that the meat suit that you as a being have on does that exact same thing. It regulates temperature. It gives out the vitamins and minerals you need. The earth that you're on does the same thing. So it's like they're finding the microcosm finding a microcosm by trying to replicate, it in something else.
They're trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
it's already a thing.
Yeah, they stumbled on a little bit.
I remember back in the early 90s when I lived in the US, there was always ads on TV saying, washing dishes, what a pain. It's so messy. Like ordinary everyday things people have been doing forever, they would suddenly, this product would say that the advertising pitch would always be the same. Isn't microwave French fries terrible? They're all soggy. Oh, nothing worse than soggy chips,
And they're defeated by the egg, right? They need the egg wave. They can't just fucking fry an egg anymore.
Yeah. And I remember back then joking with my friends going, there'll be advertisements in the future for a robot. Hands, they're so stupid. They fall and they drop things and they
so stupid
when you're picking your nose. They're terrible hands. Meet new hands, and it's actually happening now, it's actually happening.
Meet new hands.
New hands.
I was like, yeah.
Because you didn't know that yours sucked.
Yeah, you didn't know your hands were a problem until some company told you they're a problem. Just like
right, and so now you need to pay us a lot of money.
I laugh with the salt back in the 90s. They had the old people, all the old folks terrified of salt, and they were going down to Florida and they were not using salt. They were using these kind of pepper seasoning things. They were all dropping down in a couple of weeks because they weren't getting any salt intake to deal with the heat.
Yeah, the potassium and sodium goes like this.
Yeah, same thing with like the fats thing, this idea that, oh, eggs are bad for you. Oh, eggs are good for you. Oh, fat is bad for you. And now it's like, here in the US where everybody's away from fat, all the brain matter is just, it's gone.
I know. Well, the eggs are the best one of all because the cholesterol that's in your body is nothing to do with the cholesterol inside an egg. They just said cholesterol.
Yeah. Sounds like it must be. Yeah.
They had one had no relationship to the other. Yeah. And an egg is the most, the sulfur and everything in the yolk. It's one of the most
perfect foods.
It's perfect. You can live on eggs. You can live, and it's one of those. There's like 4 or 5 things you can live on. It's like eggs, chicken and duck eggs, coconut beer, avocados, and there's another one, oysters. You can live on oysters, and that's it. You can live on them, and they portrayed the superfood that's very accessible, very inexpensive, as a killer.
Yeah, bee pollen is another one. Bee pollen contains the entire spectrum of all the minerals, trace minerals, the proteins, the carbs. It's a good. That is a wonderful thing to have in the cabinet.
Yeah, I get it straight from a beekeeper around here. It's I find it difficult to. Sometimes it's a little too sweet for me. So I just put a spoonful of that and I take a small glass of tonic water like quinine, and the balance of that and the two, it goes down well. And yeah, it's a very nutritious food.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just amazing how like all these ads and all these things that just make people scared of nature around them and say, oh, here's this new bullshit solution, and just keeps people getting farther and farther away from solutions that are right in front of them.
Yeah, I'm not a Luddite by any means, but we try and replicate through technology systems that cause way more harm than good, cost way more money than we should ever be throwing at that, when everything that they're trying to replicate, it's already been made for us.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember back then I'd go into a diner and there'd be the older folks would be saying, could I have eggs and toast, no yolks.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
That's where all the nutrients are. That's where the sulfur is and everything.
Yeah. All the bodybuilders here now talk about having egg white omelets and stuff.
Yeah. Egg and Wonder Bread is like, that's not a breakfast.
It's trash.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas, are you ready to give us the psychic report?
Yeah.
Buckle up.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Well, this week's psychic weather report is very similar to last week's, except with a proviso. That is the minefield. Last week, I said the psychic weather was very, very calm, and it was until the weekend. Saturday and Sunday, all the Renfields all started coming out the woodwork, and then they vanished by Sunday night. It was like they were suddenly energized Saturday morning, and they lasted until Sunday night, and then they vanished. So it was like walking from a nice field and then suddenly into a minefield, and now we're back into a nice field again. So assuming this is a trend, what I'm thinking is beware of the psychic minefield. Be careful who you deal with and what you say. Be quiet, keep a low key, because it seems to me that the Renfields are dormant until they've been stepped on or triggered, or feel they've been stepped on or triggered, and then they will explode, and then they'll go quiet again. So we're in a calming span. There's definitely, I don't sense it to be like the calm before the storm, anything like that. It's a calm, reduced, so we're coming into autumn and the fall weather. And that's generally like a spring winding down in many parts of the world. It's a time of kind of dormant preparation for the winter. So we're dealing with that. But if you read my book, Puzzling People and Defeat the Demons, I said there's a pathological springtime and autumn. They feed the spring to get as much energy as they can, these pathological individuals, and they also feed in the autumn. They make their moves generally before Christmas as a kind of a psychic feeding thing. So although we're in a quiet, calm place, we have to be very, very, very careful of the upcoming pathological autumnal fall period. where pathological individuals in your life will start to have the final feed. They'll also can be highly manipulative as we come towards Christmas and using people. They can be very, very manipulative because they're looking for basically something for the winter. It's almost like an animalistic drive they have. In the wild, they'd be gathering up nuts if they were an animal. In the human world, they're gathering up enablers to get them through the winter. So you might find yourself suddenly being approached by someone making you an offer, wanting to get married out of the blue that you hardly know, or have a baby with them or something like that. They barely know these people, and you check into their past to make sure that they haven't been thrown out of their homes, or they're living homeless, or they're bums or something like that, because they'll be feeding in the next month or so. They can be very subtle, very manipulative, and they'll play on things like, I know in America you have your Thanksgiving and you have that in Canada too, any kind of family thing, and especially towards Christmas, they'll play on that. Stay calm and do not be emotionally swayed. We're in a quiet period between now and the next month or so, makes 2 months maybe, unless something happens in the greater world, but beware of the minefield. It's full of either Renfields or it's full of either pathological predators looking for enablers to take care of them and altering your life. That's one thing you have to remember. They often come into your life to completely rearrange it and alter it. So you have someone that you know maybe for a while, and suddenly they're in your life, and you're finding yourself like a planet orbiting them as the star. It's already started. I've seen it happening already in 1 or 2 cases. You must immediately be very wary of these situations, because they will be looking for, basically, look out for loser males if you're a woman looking for an enabler. That's a big one. And he will be looking for someone to reorganize that person's life, to have them as a planet orbiting him, the star. So the spring is a bad one for men in terms of being targeted by the pathological individuals. The autumn women tend to be the main targets. So over the next few months, even though we'll be doing this every week here, careful attention to sudden white knights, heroes, or anyone who's coming into your life who's out of the blue solving all these problems that you didn't really have, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're, there's a lot of doubt with the Rona and everything. There's a lot of insecurity. There's going to be a lot of deaths, I think, this autumn. So be on the lookout for the snake in the grass or the minefield, Renfield. Thank you. And that's the week's psychic weather.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
Thanks, Thomas. I always appreciate your weather reports, and they're always bang on for me.
Yeah, well, I saw in recent weeks someone trying to move in and take over someone's life, and we basically, the friends gathered around and stopped it. And it was exactly as I have always noticed these things, and it was a classic case. Basically, someone coming in to re-engineer another person's life out of the blue. Be very, very aware, and it can happen to men too in a business or something. So if you take on a business partner, just be careful. There's someone who does razzle dazzle, because the male pathological types are very active now between now and Christmas.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Anything you need to say on that?
No, I just completely agree with that. And yeah, especially with men towards the springtime more than women in the springtime. Yeah, looking out for the white knight. Yeah.
Yeah, I made a database about around 2011 and 2012 of people who had all these experiences, and overwhelmingly the men were targeted by a pathological individual or had their life damaged by them in the spring, and the females, it was always in the autumn leading up to Christmas. They entered their lives. So, it's just be careful, ladies. Just be careful. Wisdom, apply wisdom.
Discernment, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you again for that. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. From September 6th, says, when robot eyes gaze back at humans, something changes in our brain and behavior. When you know you're being watched by somebody, it's hard to pretend that they're not there. It can be difficult to block them out and keep focus, feeling their gaze bearing down upon you. Strangely enough, it doesn't even seem to really matter whether they're alive or not. In new research, scientists set up an experiment where people played a game against a robot. If the robot looked up at the human players during the session, it ended up affecting the participants' behavior and strategy in the game. A change that could be discerned in measurements of their neural activity reported by electroencephalography, an EEG, during the experiment. If the robot looks at you during the moment you need to make a decision on the next move, you will have a more difficult time in making a decision, says cognitive neuroscientist. I cannot say that name. I'm assuming it's Polish. Oh, they're from the Italian Institute of Technology. Your brain will also need to employ effortful and costly processes to try to ignore that gaze of the robot. In the experiment, 40 participants sat across from an iCub humanoid robot, competing in a game of chicken on a horizontal computer screen in which two simulated cars rushed head-on towards one another. Just before the moment of impact, the game would pause and the participants were asked to look up at the robot, which would either meet their gaze or look away. During this instant, the participants had to decide whether to let their cars run ahead or to deviate to the side. The results of the experiment showed that the robot's return gaze didn't influence the choices individual human players made, but it did cause their response time to slightly increase, with participants generally responding faster in the game when the iCub averted its eyes. In line with our hypothesis, the delayed responses within subjects after mutual gaze may suggest that mutual gaze entailed a higher cognitive effort. For example, by eliciting more reasoning about iCub's choices or higher degree of suppression of the potentially distracting gaze stimulus, which was irrelevant to the task, the researchers explain in their paper. According to the researchers, this change in player behavior corresponded with a change in neural activity called synchronized alpha activity, a brainwave pattern that's previously been associated with suppressing attention. What's more, when viewed across the entire experiment, higher exposure to averted gaze, where the robot did not stare back, among participants seemed to help players disengage from the social interaction with the iCub and focus on their gameplay with less distraction. Given the iCub is a humanoid robot designed loosely to mimic the shape and appearance of people, it's not altogether surprising, perhaps, that a robot's gaze can trigger our usual attentional processes. But it could have implications for the design of more advanced and interactive robots in the future. Robots will be more and more present in our everyday life. That is why it is important to understand not only the technological aspects of robot design, but also the human side of the human-robot interaction, how the human brain processes behavioral signals conveyed by robots. That's it.
Another weird one.
Getting weird again.
Yeah, just getting weird again. But yeah, this thing about like, oh, robots are going to be a part of your life now, and this idea that that lag there of response when the human eyes meet the robot eyes before somebody decides to move their car out of the way. Just this idea of like granting human beingness to a robot. This idea that they're somehow equal, or that there's this because it has fake eyes in it. That you'll be able to have some kind of empathy for the machine.
It gains a response from our processes.
Yeah, and I just think that's really weird. And again, like with that first article we did today, with the idea that robots are somehow the next in line for evolution here on Earth. It's just creepy, and they're doing this in the AI software girlfriends and boyfriends and stuff that we talked about. Just this idea of replacing interaction with jobs, people out there doing burger flipping, having robots do that and everything, that getting rid of the humanity of things and real human interaction, and substituting human interaction for human AI or human robot interaction. Cyber robots.
Yeah, good luck replacing my ass with a robot. You just couldn't, There was a thing I saw about 5 years ago, and there was a robot that would look like it was like a dummy, like a mannequin, like a human, and it was being moved from one research lab in some U.S. university to another, and it was milk was going like this when I spoke, So I have learned from my time in this research department what the human emotion of friendship is. Now, that was just something that someone had typed into a screen, and the motor, it wasn't like it said it itself. Right. And here are all the women in the research lab going, I now go to further my discoveries between human and robot relationships, and the women are, and I'm like, these people are insane. They need to be sectioned and put in a psychiatric hospital. This thing was just melting words that somebody had typed into a computer for it to say.
And they were having a meltdown?
They were crying like it was like their friend leaving. Women, these, like, two of them were women, and it was like, and one of them was a guy, a Chinese-looking guy, and he was like, I'm going to really miss you. I'm going to really miss you, R2D2, or the fuck the thing's name was. And it was the creepiest thing. But it was also insane. It just made me realize how many academics are absolutely mentally ill, crazy, in whack jobs. They should be in straitjackets. And this is a piece of plastic with but looked like dead eyes, and it was as real to them as their own families.
And with them not understanding or knowing what it means to be human, that this idea that just replicating the right words somehow is the right thing, just like you're talking about the white knight. It's like, we talked about this with Sarah recently on the symposium, that like the manipulation of people's heartstrings by just using the right keywords and linguistic triggers and weird neuro-linguistic programming that people do without other people's consent. It's just these ideas of getting in there and saying the right words, and then but not realizing that there's nothing behind those words, that it's just like you said, some nerd typed in a computer so that the robot would say the right words back, and people think that there's something behind that, not knowing what it means to be human. And then they treat themselves the same way, that their life is just a series of responses. And that's, we could go on a whole tangent on that, but yeah.
NPCs. In fact, I used to listen to like Brian Cox and Richard Dawkins talking about, the amazing experience of what a human being is. And I'd be like, my experience of being a human is nothing like what you're claiming it to be. Nothing at all. I don't experience myself as some kind of wonderment of genetic, interaction. I don't see my world that way. And they see themselves as machines. And I mean, I caused a controversy about 4 years ago. Nothing new there, but about 4 years ago. And I was arguing with some atheists, and I was saying, theoretically speaking, if we're just meat and repositories for DNA, why should I mourn you losing a child if that child to you is nothing more than a repository of DNA of you and your wife that could be replaced with another one? Why should I mourn why should that be seen as anything other than an unfortunate loss of a DNA reserve? Because that's how you see your child. If you strip down all your bullshit language about DNA and there's no soul and there's no person, that's how you see your wife. That's how you see your kids, as just machines made of flesh. And then why should we have and they went mental. They were like, because I actually held the mirror up to them of what they truly were for the first time in their lives. And I was saying things to them like, women, if you're married to some guy who says, I'm just a biological robot with no soul, get the fuck away from him. Because if you get cancer or something like that, you'll just be to him an unfortunate loss of a resource. And certainly don't have kids with him. And they went mental. They were saying things like, that's a psychopathic viewpoint. And I said, exactly. It's a psychopathic viewpoint. To actually deem your own flesh and blood, your own child, your own wife as just a robot is psychopathic. And they went bonkers, but you know something? And they were saying, you disgusting bastard, how dare you say something like that? If I lost my child, it would devastate me. And I said, then why are you only calling your child a bag of DNA? And he says, well, it's I've got a relationship with it. And what's that relationship based on? Block. Their worldview vanishes into obscurity very, very quickly when you hold the mirror up to what they are. or what they think they are, they believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I've met some of these people, especially that work in the medical industry, who are doctors and ER surgeons and stuff. And it's really alarming to see their view of what life is, that life itself, there's nothing there. There's no beingness there. There's no soul, that life is just a collection of cells that as soon as they stop working, that's it. And I've had these conversations with this one guy in particular, and it's just, wow, there's a lot of people that believe that kind of thing, and that just don't understand that that they themselves even exist. Like, they just think that they're it's like, what those people who don't think the world is real or anything, that they don't exist, that they're just a mirror of their experiences, and maybe that's all they are. But
that explains their eagerness and their readiness, and with the ease that they can perform these social experiments
they're just
on mass populations. They don't give a fuck.
And the phenomena of the discovery of the NPC, of the people that have no internal monologue, it was a phenomenal revelation in the last few years. We've discovered that, when I grew out that Reddit thread, and there was I read that original Reddit thread, and it was fascinating. And there was actually people on there saying, are you telling me that you think about things and you have discussions inside your own head?
That is so scary.
But there was one guy, and he says he came to the United States. He grew up in Korea, and he says, I definitely remember having an internal monologue as a child. And my parents emigrated to the United States. I went to Caltech, and I did a degree in like chemical engineering or something like that. And he said, as I went up towards the grades, towards PhD, he said, my ability to have an internal dialogue vanished. It went. And he goes, the education killed it. And he goes, now that I have a wife and kids, I'm working hard, and through exercise, he's actually having to get his soul back. And he's working through exercises and processes to try and encourage himself to begin that internal dialogue. But there was people saying things like, you mean to tell me you hear your own voice in your own head when you have a problem and you work it out inside your own head as a discussion? And they were like, yeah, you don't. Of course not. I'm not mentally ill.
Wow.
And then when the numbers came out of just how many people, well, it ties in with that Brahmin told me that there's more bodies on the earth than there are souls. And so the NPCs that have nothing inside them, they're just the bodies. So that's really, when they're not lying to us when they say, I'm just a body, a robot. They're not lying. That's their experience of life, but it's not ours. And these people are the futurologists. These are the ones determining the trajectory of humanity, and they're not even part of the human experience.
That's why these parallel societies are critical. Yeah.
And I always, whenever I think of this type of thing, it always takes me to that point where a lot of, and I'm sorry if this insults anyone, but that idea when Christians and certain religious people talk about having a soul rather than being a soul, and the idea that like a lot of that linguistic thing comes from the idea that you are the vessel, and there's like this soul in the vessel, and you're not the soul, but you're the thing that holds it. And just there's that identification with the body that comes linguistically when somebody say my soul this, my soul that. And it's like the idea that you're not the driver of the body, so to speak. You're not the thing moving the body. That the body is you. Where people identify themselves with the body rather than identifying with the part of themselves that is always incarnated over many incarnations. But just that linguistic thing of teaching people that they're the body, and there's this over identification with the body. And I often wonder if there's a way that through programming, through religion, through media, through whatever dark sorcery, that just by getting people to identify as the body, if that's how there can be, true soul death through our universe, that this idea of teaching people that they are just, meat piles, that they're just automatons, just golems, so that there is a detachment there. So if there once was a beingness in the body, it just gets removed from it. And, again, with the needlecraft and everything, like, I wonder how many of the people have gotten it no longer, who once had an internal dialogue, or internal monologue, if that has attenuated or gone away, or if there ever was one, or it's only the people that have never had one that just go along with it. But I really do wonder, because we've talked about people having changes and their personas. And sometimes, at least from one person I've had an experience with, it's as if her basic default template of her body, whatever you want to say, the body mind, is all that's left of that person. And there's no longer, the soul that I knew there for such a long time is just gone. Like if there once was a being inside that body, it's just the body's mind with the memories of the body, and everything that once existed there is all that's carrying on. And I know with some people, that's all that's ever there. You can talk to someone and see that there's a loop of actions that they go through, and you can see that loop maybe cycle through a couple times a day, or you see it cycle through like, every few weeks or something. But there's only, you pull the string on the back of them on the doll, and it says the same couple things until you start realizing, okay, this toy only says a few different catchphrases. And then, but that's just, again, the NPC that controls the body, just like an NPC in a video game, where you can put a ragdoll thing there and just script it to say it's programmed to do this. It can be reprogrammed to learn things, but there's never a player behind the controller moving that. So, but anyway, I just that idea of the identification with the body rather than identifying yourself as you, the being that inhabit a body. If somehow linguistically, all this weird neurolinguistic programming that's out there, convincing people that they are a body that can possibly, inhabit a soul someday, or that their soul has to be saved or something and be, collected at the end of the game. I just think that's real creepy that there's that linguistic thing about owning a soul or having a soul that has to be preserved so that it can be reaped or harvested at the end, where, these weird Christian end time prophecies that time will eventually end and all the souls will be removed off the planet. I just feel like we're in some kind of weird harvesting like that someone's trying to do. But again, this is going off on a weird tangent.
The NPC thing answered so many mysteries in my life. My last Matrix job here, I was working for a pensions company, and mostly I worked with actuaries. And these are people who are incredibly good at mathematics. The actuary test is as difficult to pass as the legal bar test, and they were all the same. There was no personality, and I just thought they were all good nerds or they're geeks, this kind of thing. But looking now that I know about the NPC thing, I'm thinking back to things like we'd have a meeting, say a new pension plan was being launched, and they'd say, okay, here's how we sell it to the employees of this company. And I'd noticed that myself when they have like this headbanging session, I would go like this, thinking in my head. Another guy would be like this, but all the actuaries would be writing it down on pens. And that's how the NPC works things out. They write it down on a piece of paper, where we do it in our heads. And I can remember quite clearly, there was me, the senior manager, and there was an HR person. And we would be like this, like, these kind of gestures when you're thinking, we're brainstorming, but the actuaries would be like this.
Yeah, because like a line of code.
They couldn't do it here.
Yeah.
And so that's why the NPC thing, I'll be forever grateful when that theory came along of no internal dialogue, because it answered so many questions that haunted me during my life about certain people.
Why you just would feel so uncomfortable around certain.
Yeah. Well, just things they did. I said, don't you think? What's wrong with you? Like, did you not think about this? Did you not, do you want more from life than just being, code? To go along with the crowd. They don't think
that question doesn't even make sense to them.
Right.
Yeah. Why, go, like I can remember, this is a classic one. I'm not going to say who it is because I get into trouble. But when the Irish soccer team, when I was following them as a kid, they were not too good. And then they started getting really, really good in the 1990s. The late 80s and the 1990s became one of the best national sides in the world. And all these people who had no interest in soccer were all wearing green and white and orange jerseys and painting their houses up. And I was like, why are you had never went to a match. You couldn't even name the players, but it was all programming robots, get with the winning team. They were just robots, and this is the passion of their lives. It was only the passion of their lives because TV had told them, this is now the passion of your life. And that was like a real one. I was like, well, you're into this now? And they'd be like sending me photographs of them all dressed up. And it used to slag me off when I used to go to games as a kid, saying, oh, they're rubbish. They'll never do anything. It was unbelievable. Now, they just did what the media told them to do.
Yeah, it's like there's no creative idea behind anything. They can't come out with an original idea. It's just replicating whatever's popular at the moment.
It wasn't the genuine love of the team's success. It was the genuine need to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To be that the excitement was being one of the gang, not the enjoyment of the team's success and the games and stuff and the World Cup and all that stuff. It wasn't that. It was simply we found something to fit in and this is what you do.
Right.
It's
and sport is full of that. Sports teams. I'm sure like when I don't know whoever the clubs are in your part of the world, there's no interest in them until it gets like it's near the Super Bowl or the World Series, and suddenly everyone's a major fan.
Right.
And they couldn't invite the rest of glory hunters, and that'll be all the NPC type thing as well.
It's real interesting in the music scene too, when you can tell if someone's a living human or an NPC. And you talk about jazz and improvisation, and when you go into improvisation, there's the early way of learning it where you learn a lick. So you learn a little noodle to play on your instrument, and then you learn how to play that in all 12 keys. You learn how to play it inverted. You learn how to play it retrograde, and that's a great way to put together an improvised solo. But if you talk to someone that's all that they can do in jazz, where they can play all these amazing licks as if they're like a data bank of code to pull out, but they can never come up with a new novel idea that just comes from somewhere else, a totally chaotic idea of like novel music. And it's the same thing with composers too. Like some composers can only mimic something and go, okay, write me something in the style of this, write me something in the style of that. Here's a reference track, make it sound like this. That's the only way they can start with, rather than going, come up with a new idea. What new idea? Like, oh, that music you hear in your head? No, you're insane. Like I remember when I was doing my degree program in one of my final, 400 level classes, we talked about composition. And I said something about, I'll get ideas in the shower, for whatever reason. And my instructor's like, oh, they make drugs for that, right? I'm like, yeah, fuck you, man. It's like this idea that like,
I remember going on a camping trip when I was a kid. It's funny, probably my first NPC experience was a German guy. No offense, German people. I don't mean because he's German, he was like that. But he was a girl I knew was a boyfriend. And he had learned, was singing songs on the guitar, and he was singing I Want You by Bob Dylan. And he was playing the chords correctly, but he was playing how we learned it from the songbook, which is not how it always is. So I said, just politely, not lecturing him, I says, well, yeah, they're the right chords, but that's not how Bob Dylan plays it. And so I just took the guitar off and showed him like the hammer-ons that gives you that, like, that's the accents. And he was like, no, the process is not like this. And he went into the tent and pulled out the Bob Dylan songbook and was going D, C, G. No, what? But
they never shot you straight.
Yeah, and I said, no, but listen to what I'm playing. It sounds like the version on the Bob Dylan record. It's the right chords, but there's hammer-ons. It's not mentioned in the book. This is not the process.
It's totale Scheiße. Yeah.
An NPC. Look,
yeah.
I'll be forever grateful for that theory, discovering that theory.
Yeah. Right, I know, and I love it with improvisation, because it's like you can tell who's a real jazz musician because they can just out of nowhere a beautiful line can just come out of them. It's like, my God, that's magic when someone has a novel melody that just comes out of them, and that's I love watching people do improvised music in that way, and it's cool. You got to have your bag of licks on your hip to pull something out when you don't have anything to say, but it's like when new music can come out of someone, that's a magical moment.
Long live the real humans. Long live the real humans.
The naturals. Or the organics. That's
the organics.
We have one more.
We got one more. Okay. This one's from September 9th. It says, when mysterious blue flashes lit up the sky after Mexico earthquake, some feared apocalypse. Bright lights illuminated the night sky Tuesday during a powerful earthquake near the Pacific resort city of Acapulco that killed at least one person and rocked buildings hundreds of miles away in Mexico City. The mysterious light show rattled many residents, some of whom shared videos online of blue flashes. Some used the hashtag apocalypsis, Spanish for the apocalypse, as the eruption of light coincided with swaying buildings and rock slides. It's not the first puzzling light spectacle to coincide with a major earthquake. In 2017, for example, images of green and blue lights appeared on social media following a magnitude 8.1 earthquake in Mexico. Some conjectured that the lights were another instance of earthquake lights, a phenomenon that has baffled experts for years.
We'll down a little bit.
Mom moment.
We'll down a little bit up there.
Rutgers University physics professor Troy Shinbrodt told USA Today that earthquake lights, or EQL, are relatively rare but mysterious, long-sparking, far-fetched theories of UFOs and supernatural spirits. While most earthquakes, even large ones, do not exhibit EQL, Shinbrodt said that they have been recorded historically. He has tried to recreate earthquake lights in his lab by simulating slip events, similar to how tectonic plates slip past one another during an earthquake. He said his lab has measured voltage changes during these slip events, supporting the idea that such voltage changes may occur during an earthquake. A big hug to everyone. One dead after powerful earthquake rocks Mexican resort city. Oh, sorry, that was a side. No. But the debate over why these voltage changes occur is charged, he said. Some believe the light is caused by the friction of the rock releasing energy. Others say some rocks produce significant electric fields when they are compressed in certain ways. The cause of these lights is something that's quite controversial because no one really knows. The USGS says there is also debate over whether EQL exists at all, and some geophysicists doubt that any of the reports constitute solid evidence for EQL, whereas others think that at least some reports plausibly correspond to EQL, according to the USGS website. The website also states that some EQL reports actually turned out to be caused by shaking power lines during an earthquake. Shinbrodt said the lights in Mexico may be earthquake lights, but could also be electric shorts or exploding infrastructure, like power stations caused by an earthquake. The overall message for me is that earthquake lights do appear to exist and are mysterious. I don't know that this particular example is earthquake lights, but it could have been. And I think it would be worth studying more carefully what the cause of these lights is, because very few people are actually doing this research.
It's a good one.
This is one of my favorite subjects, earth lights and mysterious lights. One of my favorite Fortean subjects. All my life, it's fascinated me. There was these lights after earthquakes are really mysterious. There was remember the huge earthquake in Chile in 2008, the one that actually tilted the earth a degree or so.
The Monomythic, or no?
Yeah, and they had some fantastic films of these amazing rainbow-colored streams in the sky before the earthquake hit. And what's weird is that some of these lights seem to demonstrate an intelligence to them, like the Phoenix lights or the ones in Norway, that there's a famous valley in Norway where they move through the valley, in a sizable area where there's always mountains, it's always a mountainous area, and they will actually move around corners and around into they'll go around into another valley, like as if they're steering, they know the way around. I think it's a fantastic subject, and it's great that so much footage is coming out in recent years. I mean, you say, okay, there's some kind of plasma caused by the friction of the Earth's tectonic plates or whatever, but when you hear these stories that they seem to have an intelligence to them, like the ones in the Ohio Valley before the Mothman event, they were very strange. And John Keel described them as like being like animals. They had like a life to them. So it's absolutely one of my favorite stories is the mysterious earth lights and the ones connected to earthquakes.
Yeah, we had Jeff Woolwine on a couple months ago too, where he really likes this too over in Petroglyphs in the Sky. We had him on back in June, July some time frame. But yeah, he's watching. Hey Jeff, and I really like that. We've been doing this little bit of research into quartz too, and the compression that what occurs there, and if we've talked about the gin before too with balls of plasma. And I wonder too, if a beingness requires a body of some sort to occupy, if plasma is complex enough for a being to transport itself through plasma, like if it's, you can create plasma that doesn't have intelligence in it, but if there's plasma that's created some sort of elemental or some sort of entity, yeah, and use it as a temporary body to, like the Foo Fighters around, not the band, but the, around
The Foo Fighter thing is so bizarre because was that the wonder weapon? Where did the Nazis invoking jinns to attack U.S. bombers, and or was it caused by the sheer number of explosives going off in Berlin? It was actually causing earthquakes. But the Foo Fighter one was that the wonder weapon? Did they find something in Tibet or North Africa or in the Antarctic that they could put in plasma? I mean, I don't even think we've even scratched the surface of what the Third Reich mystical scientists were up to. I mean, that became very apparent. When I went to Wielisburg Castle, I thought to myself, okay, it'll just be like some kind of gay Nazi temple where they pray, they marched around on their leather and stuff. No, there was a powerful energy there. And it wasn't malicious energy. It wasn't dark, but it was powerful. And it's all, again, that castle is in mountains. It's on a mountain. And I mean, yeah, wow, what a great story. I never tired of these Earthlight stories. And and even the way that people thought it was the apocalypse, it shows the psychological effect it has on the average person. Like when you see, I've never seen one of these lights. A friend of mine, Kieran Cullen, lives up at the Brickleaf Mountains in South Sligo, where the Carrowkeel ancient megaliths are. He lives right at the bottom of the mountain. Now, up until 20 years ago, that was a very remote part of Ireland. I can remember going there back as a kid on a cycling holiday, and it was like going into like ancient times. You went, the valley was not accessible as it is today. You might as well have been back in like prehistoric times. But he observes and takes photographs of the lights all around those megaliths as well. So he now theorizes that the megaliths were built there in locations where these lights were appearing, and they're connected to them somehow. And he showed me the videos he has of them and everything. They're balls of plasma. And again, it's a mountain range.
There's a place in West Texas called Marfa, and they have the Marfa Lights phenomenon. And you can go there and see them almost every night of the week. And they, as far as I know, still have no logical explanation for why they're there, but they're huge balls of light, and they just dance over the valley at night.
Yeah, that's the thing. They seem to have a purpose. They're not just floating around. They seem to have a direction and everything to them. I like Jason's idea that an entity could come, or a spirit could somehow jump into them and use them as a kind of a machine to guide them. So and then you have the gin thing of smokeless fire. What smokeless fire? Plasma.
Right. Yeah, and you were talking about the Wunderwaffe. What the idea wasn't just the bombing. It's like, well, why? I would say both. If they were into some kind of a dark occult technology, using it as a weapon, that part of it would be to create such a tremendous psychic charge from bombing the shit out of people, so that all that energy is being making a capacitance, so to speak. So with the capacitance of charge, I mean, we talk about this again on one of the symposiums too, about where something tremendously bad happens, there's an energy release, and if there's something there to hold on to that, if it's plasma or if it's some kind of device that can, again, make a capacitance where that can be held into something and then discharged, that again, an entity could come into that, just like with a gin moving through a ball of plasma, and that could be what was in the Wunderwaffe with the idea of bringing something out of the Middle East, some sort of entity where they've got conjurers over on the other side of the country, and they're bombing something over there and sending entities into it. That kind of shit doesn't surprise me one bit, that if there's weaponry like that still could be used with the 5G and everything we were talking about earlier. We're kind of pulling this full circle, that the airwaves that they're transmitting things on with radio frequency for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I would imagine the digital gin type of thing, where they can send digital golems that are totally invisible, that are part of the it's such a high frequency up there that we wouldn't see them, but we interact with them sometimes with these weird social media profiles and stuff. So
the spiritual intensity, the spiritual or occultic nature of war hasn't been discovered enough. It hasn't been discussed or investigated enough. I couldn't imagine what the psychic charge was like in Berlin in the last week of April 1945. It must have seemed like the end of the world. And the whole of World War II compressed into this small area in the center of Berlin. I couldn't imagine what the charge was. Actually, that movie Downfall does kind of give you an insight into it. although it's not a supernatural film, but it gives you an insight of what it must have been like, the claustrophobia and stuff. But I mean, the war battle thing, the intensity of the psychic charge. I bet this, you hear stories like, actually before the Third Reich annexed Austria, the whole of Europe was filled with bright lights that danced all over the sky. They were so bright they were seen as far away as New York. They were so across the ocean. So I mean, the Foo Fighters must have been something like that. And are these lights that appear with earthquakes, are they created by the earthquakes, or are they catalytic exteriorization phenomena created by the people living there? That's exactly what I want to know. Yeah.
I would have bet it's more having to do with that. And there's the thing in Los Angeles too, what they based Battle Los Angeles, that film off, where there was just lights that showed up.
The Battle of Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, the Navy and Marines were shelling the shit out of it. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. That's it. Any story like that, I love it. To do with strange lights, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine sooner. I was expecting more of that to be occurring during the Rona times, but there hasn't been like one area necessarily. It's like everything's been spread out and evenly dispersed so much with this. But if there's, I mean, I guess maybe Australia right now with how terribly fucking draconian they've got things over there, that maybe there's going to be something like this in Australia. But the thing I think that is that most of the people in our generation go along with the programming so much, but there's not going to be as much of a psychic charge being let off.
Yeah, and there was also a lot of them medicated and a lot of alcohol. Remember, we were encouraged to drink as much alcohol as during the first lockdown. Yeah. Basically, sales of alcohol were like the greatest ever. So people are just at home getting shit faced. So you're not going to get any kind of psychic event when you're wasted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. All right, guys.
Watching Fleabag on Netflix.
Oh God. Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on episode 12.
Episode 12. Wow, a dozen already.
Yep.
Yeah. The next one, 13 will have a good charge. The next one. Yeah, I enjoyed it tonight. Yeah, I like to. I mean, the weather stuff is that fascinating, but I have to say personally, I love the 14 stories the best.
Yeah.
And the transhumanist ones. They're so, because I think there's a common theme there. There's something that can be stitched in, like the sort of like techno Christ has risen, the new technological religion. Yeah, I mean, I hope in years to come these programs will look back at some like really important archive of like the discussions that society should have been having.
Right.
We weren't. We were having it on their behalf.
We're having it here.
Yeah. And again, thanks for everybody for tuning in to the live stream here on Facebook. And
thanks for jumping into the chats.
Yeah. We'll be doing another pub in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to do every fortnightly on Sunday nights. We'll make a Facebook event thing again, let you all know. And we'll keep doing these every Monday. If you guys are liking them, please share this stuff around and, get past our 11,000 subscriber mark here soon on Beyond Room 313 Facebook. We'll make 11,000. There's 10,000 last month. So keep this on going and, I'll be throwing some more stuff at you guys. So
yeah, we appreciate that.
No. Yeah, watch out for the white knights. Watch out for the river spiders and things that are going to consume you during.
Yeah. Avoid the white knights. Look for the white lights.
There you go.
There you go. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.